The Nelson County Governors, they won the state title in basketball in the 2000s. Head coach at the time was Brandon Garrett. He talks about that. He talks about the late Marvin Martin. And boy, did I just have an obsession to talk about dunking. I once heard that Brandon Garrett did a tomahawk dunk. Now, if you're not familiar with the tomahawk, that's when you bring it behind your head and just throw it down. Brandon Garrett tells me, is that true or is that false? All of it on the Sports Buffet podcast. Okay, so we're at the state championship game of when you win the state championship. I forget who'd you beat.
Surrey County.
Okay, how much can you remember from that game or from that whole day, really?
It's kind of a blur, but I remember a lot. They had Johnny Newman's son played for
Yep.
him. Johnny Newman, was a star at Richmond, played for the Knicks, the Hornets. So they got to go and practice at University of Richmond. And we would walk to Maggie Walker and practice up there, and not even close to the same atmosphere. But again, our guys were so tight. We were having fun. We were loose. We actually had stayed down there the night before, and we talked like, hey, we're not going to babysit you. If you want to stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning, then it's going to show tomorrow when we get up and we go play that game. I think we played the early game like 11 o'clock.
Right.
But our seniors were, we didn't have to do a lot of that stuff because they knew what it meant. Those guys, they were in the bed, they did their own bed checks, stuff like that. We didn't have to worry about that.
I'm hearing they self-policed themselves.
They did because we had a group of seniors, Thomas, TJ, Mike, and Chris, and then we had Caleb Saunders. Those guys wanted to win. Caleb didn't play much, but great contributor, in practice and getting our guys ready. I remember our playoff run. He was one of the ones. We played Luray, and Luray almost beat us in the first round. They ran the flex. They slowed it way down. And he was one of the guys who he was running that offense. They took a day or two, and I think Coach Rogers got them on the flex and how to run it pretty good. And, he got us ready for that. And again, that goes back to everybody has a role on your team, and our one purpose is to win. But back to that day, we went to Maggie Walker for a shoot around. Our guys were fairly loose, I feel like, and it was a close game, but we were in control most of the way. I think we ended up winning by like 3 points, but the closest it got, I think TJ Martin went to the line in the fourth quarter, knocked down a couple big free throws.
Right.
So it wasn't much time left. And I felt like, and I've told many people this, no disrespect to Surrey because they had a really good team, but Chesterfield Community was the team that I felt like if we could beat them, then it would be on me if we did not win the state championship because they had a couple of twins. They had two twins that I think were about 6'7". They had a point guard that was really, really good. He went and played some college basketball. They had another kid that was about 6'4", 6'5". They were big. They were athletic. And I felt like if we could beat them, that we had a chance to win state, and if we didn't, it was going to be on me personally and our coaching staff if we didn't.
They kind of reminded me, Chesterfield, of those Pennsylvania County teams to where they would just run, but they were bigger and maybe faster than a Dan Riverish or a Chatham or a Gretna.
Yeah, and our team was small.
Right.
Stevie was about 6'1", and he played the 5 for us. So we basically played with 4 guards. And Stevie, again, 6'1", not very big.
And for how many people want to talk about how good Thomas was? And I'm not saying he's not. It's not like Thomas was Andre the Giant.
Yeah, you're right. I remember I had Chris Jones. Chris is about 5'8",
yep.
And he was guarding the Jones kid. He was about 6'4", 6'5", and about 240, But again, Chris was our bulldog. He took that challenge of playing defense. He scored 6, 8, 10 points a game, but he was going to get us 5 rebounds. He was going to draw a couple charges, and he was going to, he was going to be that bulldog. Again, everybody had a role on that team, and they did that to the best of their ability.
If I said to you, define the word teammate for me, how would you define it and kind of give some examples from your life?
I really feel like teammate is somebody who's unselfish, um, who, again, they're not worried about scoring. They're worried about making their team better. And whatever they can do to do that, they're going to do it. Whether it's in practice, like I said, with Caleb Saunders and those guys running that flex offense. Taking 2 days. They knew they're not going to be the focus. You know, but we're getting these guys who are going to go out there and play. The majority of the minutes prepared for what we're going to face. So they had a big role in that. If they don't go out and do that and prepare us to play Luray, then maybe we don't beat them. So that's a teammate. Somebody it's going to be there to pick you up when you're down because there's going to be times when we have bad days, we have bad games, um, y- y- and there's a friendship to that. It's not just about the game, and that's what I've always tried to do is not just teach about the game on the floor, but use basketball in a way to teach life lessons, and that's what Coach Fox did for me and all the guys who played for him. And it took me a while personally to kind of realize that, and see what he was doing. So I wanted to do the same thing for my players because I knew how much it meant to me, and I knew, sometimes as young men and adults, we go off in different directions, and sometimes we make bad decisions, and sometimes things don't turn out the way we want, but how we get back on course. That was my goal to do, to teach guys through basketball.
If I'm not mistaken, you were kind of in a little bit of a luxury as a single A coach to where you got to pretty much bring the staff in that you wanted. You didn't really inherit a ton of people, if I'm not mistaken, that already came with the school, so to speak.
No, I didn't because and I don't know why. Nelson County is so spread out. And again, Coach Billy Lee, I call him Coach because he was the football coach up there for a long time, and his dad was before him. Um, he was telling me, one time how his experience, having kids from all the way up near Afton, which you're right outside of Waynesboro,
Yep.
to kids, Gladstone, Regina, like you're near Appomattox, So it's so spread out, it's hard to get, guys, there. And I've always felt like as a coach, that it's very important to hire your own guys because you're getting people in there that one you trust, and two that are going to be on the same page with you, whatever your philosophy might be. And I was lucky enough, and Roger Collins was the superintendent at the time, and he allowed me to do that. I did have one guy, Marvin Martin,
Yep.
who's passed away. Marvin was a great guy, and later on ended up coaching there a few years ago, actually not that long ago. And he coached my JV team for my first 3 years there. And Marvin was a great guy, great friend. We would talk all the time. He worked in the school system. Not at the time, but down the road he did. And
Right.
we talk all the time about basketball and just life. But I was lucky enough and had the support to be able to bring in my own guys.
By the way, if you're unfamiliar with what Marvin Martin looked like, he kind of looked like Apollo Creed's trainer in Rocky Four, in my eyes.
Right. Yeah.
And Marvin was Mr. Nelson County to me because Marvin, like you said, Marvin was kind of the constant there. He passed away, and I think it left a big hole for Nelson to where they're going to mourn that guy more than they're going to mourn a 1 year or a 2 year.
Yeah, and Marvin, he was a great guy. He definitely was. And Debbie, his wife, she was always great. She supported us. Um, she coached girls basketball a couple times up there. But a quick story about Marvin: we're playing Page County in the region championship. We were in Region D at the time, playing up at Eastern Mennonite, and they do the coach introductions. And how I had my coaches always done this, you guys, I didn't care what we wore, but we all wanted everybody to be the same. So,
Right.
if we're going to wear a tie, then everybody wears a tie. If we're wearing a polo, and Marvin comes out region championship game and he's dressed in a tux. And the announcer says, now dress as the governor himself, Marvin Martin. And, our guys would, we would say that all the time to Marvin, and just a funny memory about Marvin.
And Travis and Paul were not wearing tuxes. that night
Oh
crowd.
no.
Now I've heard a story about you from your playing days. I want to say it was in college. Um, you actually executed a tomahawk dunk coming down the lane.
I used to be able to dunk, Bob, but I don't think I could do it now if someone paid me.
If
Uh,
no one has ever seen Brandon Garrett, by the way, he is not the guy I would pick out of a lineup to say, "Oh yeah, that guy's going to do a tomahawk coming down the lane." And I say that
yeah,
lovingly.
I know, I know. Um, um, I used to, I really, back when I played, that's one thing that I felt like I could always do was jump, not off 2 feet though, 1 foot. I was a 1 foot dunker. In fact, when I went down to prep school in South Carolina and played down there, we would run some fast break drills, and my coach, he would make me keep running them until I was dunking off 2 feet every time. Like he's like, you have to play at the next level, you need to be able to dunk off 2 feet. And I just remember running those drills over and over, those fast break drills, and I would get the ball and I have to jump off 2 feet to dunk. But yeah, I really, that's something I used to pride myself as being a good enough athlete to, get up and jump, with some other guys. And
So the tomahawk dunk story is true.
I would say yes,
How
probably yes.
often did you do this tomahawk dunk? Because I mean, tomahawk dunks are not commonplace.
uh I don't know. I used to be able. I used to be able to dunk pretty easily. And that was just part of my game. Like I said earlier, there was not one facet of my game that I would say I was really strong.
Right.
I wasn't a great ball handler. I've always been a pretty good passer, and I used to be a good leaper. I could get up pretty good,
Did
but
you
I
need the
wasn't a good
breakaway, or
shooter.
could you dunk in traffic?
I could dunk in traffic,
Okay.
especially after when I was 16 when I was a senior. I turned 17 during basketball season, so my post grad year didn't hurt me at all. But that year, physically, I matured a lot. Taking 16 versus 18-year-olds a big difference physically. And by the time I got in South Carolina when I was doing my post grad stuff, I was much more physically mature than I was as a senior in high school.
It may sound like I have an obsession about dunking, but
Mm.
when was your first dunk? Do you remember your first one?
I'm going to say it's probably went until probably my 11th grade year. I was not the first person. We had a group of guys. We were all buddies, and it was two or three of them dunking before me. But I used to tell guys who are trying to learn how to dunk, start with a tennis ball, then go to a volleyball, because unless you can really palm the ball and hold it really good in your hand, you have to
Right.
learn how to turn that ball.
Yep.
Um, so I'd say probably 10th or 11th grade, late 10th grade year, maybe basketball season, 11th grade, something like that.
Do you remember your first one during a game?
I do not.
So but I'm right there with you, because I think a lot of people I'll see that'll do it like in a PE class or whatever. They'll always dunk a volleyball first, and if you can't palm a basketball, you ain't dunking it, bro.
No, you really have to get up there and learn how to turn the ball over, because you have to hold it right, because if not, you're not it's going to come out of your hand, or you're going to throw it over top of the rim.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen somebody that's going to go up to dunk and it either pops out or they miss it or they get stuffed by the rim, so to say?
Yeah, I still, believe it or not, I still play a little bit. And I see that a lot with these younger guys. They'll go up and they can't dunk it, but they want it to look like they can, and they'll throw it over top of the rim or something like that. So I still see that sometimes. Yeah.
When you went to Nelson County, because I don't think you ever coached in the small gym, did you?
No, no. Now we practiced up there a lot, and you may not remember this, but the year we won the state championship, we had a sprinkler bust
Yep.
in the new gym.
Yep.
And I tried and tried to get Charlie Bennett to let us play in that old gym, and he wouldn't do it. I know you know, it's we would have sold it out pretty quick, because by the time we had got to that point in the year, we were pretty much selling out at home. Um,
Well, that big gym's freaking ginormous.
it is. It's a big gym. And it's not. It's a great atmosphere. Like any gym, if you fill it up, it's going to be a great atmosphere. But when it's empty, it's not near as good. But I've heard a lot of stories about that old gym, from different people around Nelson County and how they used to have bleachers on the ends. And,
Yep.
basically people were standing up all the way around and there wasn't much room on the sidelines or, the baseline to inbound the ball because you had somebody right there breathing down your neck as you're trying to throw the ball in.
See, for me, that's more of a home court advantage than a big gym.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's one of the reasons I was asking Mr. Bennett, like, please let us play down here. Please let
Right.
us play down here. And if I could do it again, it would be nice to play. One game a year down there would be great. But that gym they had, it's really a nice gym. It's a beautiful facility. And Greg Mullins, who's the AD there, he's done a lot of work aesthetically. Just putting some stuff on the wall. It looks really good.
What
Really
was your
does.
first thought when you walked in there? Because I've got to imagine it's bigger than Perry McClure.
Yeah, it is. I played in the old Cracker Box gym. I remember Saturday morning practices, the heat wouldn't be on. You could see your breath. When I walked in and seen it, when I was touring, I'm like, this is special. And it was clean. It was empty. There's nothing really on the wall. So it's almost like opening up a new cabinet.
Right.
What do we want to put in here?
It's got that new car smell.
Yeah, yeah, it really did.
Well, I remember a story, and I can't remember if you were there or not yet when they had rotated to where the AA regional was being played at Nelson for part of it and at Appomattox for one part. And Mike Cardellaro told Mark Hanks, his college roommate, who was coaching at Pulaski at the time, hey, take your kids up there and walk around because that one side of the gym, you can think you're in bounds, and it's going way out of bounds.
I don't remember that, but I do know Mark. I do know Mark Hanks. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's where you can get the home court advantage because it's kind of like baseball. You've got to know where you're going to get that hop on the ground ball. Going to a big gym like that, that's your advantage because it can look so big to somebody else. They might think they have room, and they don't have as much room as they thought.
Yeah, and going back to what I said earlier, you were asking me about the day we played that state championship game, and I told you about those kids from Surrey got to go to the University of Richmond. That depth perception on a backboard when you're in a big open gym like
Yep.
that. It kind of plays tricks on your mind because it's kind of like Hoosiers. They measure it's the same height, it's 10 feet, but the depth perception is what changes. And them going over to Richmond to get that experience, a day or two before and the day of, when you shoot around, that's a big difference. And we're up there on metal backboard shooting, so it's a little disadvantage for us.
I have seen so many good shooters become average shooters at the Siegel Center because of that depth perception, like you mentioned. But one guy I did not see as an average shooter at the Siegel Center was Andrew Rousey.
Well, I don't think it mattered what gym Andrew was playing in. He was going to light it up, and that's just really a testament to his work ethic, in high school, and then it transferred, of course, over into college, and then as him playing professional, he could light it up. He
I,
really could.
I'm not even going to play the race card on it, but if you were to match him up against two Stiths and a cousin Stith, you'd probably take the Stiths just because.
Yeah, you would on paper,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Andrew could hold his own against anybody, and again, still play a little bit. Haven't played with or really seen Andrew in a long time, but when he would come down to the gym, this is after he had finished. I think he came down actually. He was in from Marquette, and I could just tell how much stronger he got. And sometimes I think with Andrew, you look at him and if he's in street clothes, you're like, no way.
Right.
And and once he put the basketball uniform on, the shoes on, and you watched him, it was amazing just to watch. And it was great for our community. I know Travis has a great relationship with Andrew. And his mom and dad, did a lot of work with him, growing up, supporting him, getting him, make sure he's in the gym and, AAU and all that stuff. But it was really fascinating, to see a small town guy from Lexington with all those accomplishments and accolades.
Well, final thing, and we'll do this again much more down the road. The guys like Thomas Brown, the guys like Andrew Rousey, the guys like Kenny Hunt from Alta Vista, those are the guys that I think of as being those AAU players as opposed to the 7th or 8th guy. And I'm not trying to knock that. I'm not trying to knock those kids on the bench because they need to get better somehow too. But those kids don't strike me as the guys that are going to go out and play AAU. So that's when we talk about travel ball. To me, I feel like travel ball used to be reserved for your superstars.
Yeah, I think it did. And going back, and not saying I was a superstar, but even when I played in Botetourt, we had, some of the best players from Botetourt, James River, a couple of us from Paramour, and a couple other schools. And, it was the best 2 or 3 guys off of each team. And, we weren't great by any means, but that's what it was, and it wasn't, I paid my, couple $100, so I'm going to be on the team. It was different. It really was. And, you took the best of the best, and that's how it was. And I really think, that's how you get better is when you play against good competition like that. And that develops the player, physically and mentally.
It's always fun to catch up with Brandon Garrett. He is the former head coach at Nelson County, and always good to talk to me. We'll hear more from Coach Garrett and more from others right here on the Sports Buffet podcast with Bob Alvis.